By the end of this video, you will learn how to finally master the art of dinking in pickleball, and more importantly, how to stop being confused by all the mixed advice out there. Some people say your dink should only come from the shoulder. Others insist you should lock your wrist, keep your elbow stiff, and just swing your arm like a pendulum. Then there are players who swear by using wrist flicks for better control. So which one is right? The truth is, there isn't just one way. Every player's body and style are slightly different. And to find what truly works for you, you have to understand how each part of your body contributes to the shot. That's what this video is all about, giving you the full picture of dinking mechanics so you can play with confidence, consistency, and your own unique rhythm. If you've ever felt completely lost about how to dink, you're not alone. The problem isn't that the advice you hear is wrong, it's that it's incomplete. When someone says, only use your shoulder, they're focusing on one part of the motion, but leaving out how the rest of your body affects the paddle. Without context, these tips can contradict each other and make you feel robotic or tense. You end up overthinking, wondering if you should be locking your wrist, loosening your elbow, or swinging from the shoulder. And that mental noise makes it impossible to develop touch. The real key to understanding dinking is realizing that your entire body is connected. Your shoulder, elbow, wrist, waist, and knees all work together to control the paddle face, but not all of them should move at the same time. Each joint or hinge has a specific purpose, and when you understand what each one does, you can decide which hinge to use for different types of dinks instead of trying to apply one generic rule to every shot. Let's start from the ground up, because your lower body determines how stable and balanced you are when you dink. The most useful hinge here is your knees. When you bend at the knees, you lower your body without changing the angle of your paddle face. That means you can get down to reach a low ball while keeping your paddle perfectly aligned. Bending your knees also keeps you centered and ready to move in any direction, which is critical at the kitchen line. The hinge you want to avoid is your waist. Many players try to reach low shots by bending at the waist instead of the knees. When that happens, the paddle face changes as you tilt forward, opening or closing unintentionally. Then, when you straighten back up, the angle shifts again. This constant movement makes it almost impossible to control your contact point, and it often leads to balls popping up or diving into the net. So next time you're reaching for a dink, think about sinking with your knees, not bending with your back. That single change creates a solid foundation for every shot you hit. Now that your lower body is stable, let's move up to the shoulder. This is the hinge most people talk about when it comes to dinking, and for good reason. The shoulder gives you smooth, consistent motion and helps maintain a steady paddle face throughout the swing. When you lock your wrist and elbow and move primarily from the shoulder, the motion becomes simple and repeatable. That's why so many coaches teach beginners to dink from the shoulder. It limits unnecessary movement and helps you focus on control instead of power. The shoulder-only dink is perfect when you're trying to hit a soft, controlled shot that stays low and keeps your opponent at bay. It's also great for slice dinks, where you're brushing slightly under the ball, but keeping the paddle face steady. This method creates predictability. Every shot feels the same, and your consistency improves dramatically. Next comes the elbow, which adds a little more finesse and shape to your shots. The elbow hinge becomes important when you want to lift the ball or add topspin, like when you're trying to roll a dink or drop it softly into the kitchen. When you bend and straighten your elbow, it creates a gentle upward motion that brushes under the ball, helping it clear the net with more arc and softness. Unlike the shoulder-only shot, the elbow-driven dink gives you more flexibility in your trajectory. It's especially helpful when you're hitting from slightly below net level, where you need that little upward motion to lift the ball back into play. Think of it as adding touch and control rather than power. However, you have to be careful not to combine this with too much shoulder or wrist movement. Once again, isolating this hinge keeps your motion clean and repeatable. Now, let's talk about the wrist. Easily the most misunderstood hinge in all of pickleball. You'll hear players say never to use it, but if you watch high-level players closely, you'll notice many of them do use their wrist, just not in an uncontrolled way. The wrist is what gives you precision and spin when used correctly. Because it's the hinge closest to your paddle, Even the smallest motion here has the biggest effect on the ball. Using the wrist alone allows you to add delicate spin, quick reactions, and subtle direction changes. It's like fine-tuning the paddle for a perfect note. But if you combine wrist movement with active elbow or shoulder motion, you multiply those effects and lose control. That's why so many players struggle when they try to add wrist. They're actually using several hinges at once without realizing it. So the rule of thumb here is simple. When you're using your wrist, isolate it. Keep your shoulder and elbow quiet. That way, your paddle path stays consistent, and you get the benefits of added spin and touch without losing accuracy. So let's bring this all together. Dinking isn't about locking everything and moving like a robot, and it's not about flicking your wrist wildly either. It's about understanding which hinge does what and using them intentionally. Bend your knees instead of your waist to stay stable. Use your shoulder for control and consistency. Use your elbow for lift and topspin. Use your wrist for finesse and spin. And remember, only one hinge per shot. Once you start thinking this way, dinking stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling deliberate. You'll notice your paddle control improving, your confidence at the kitchen line growing, and your unforced errors dropping fast. So the next time you're on the court, take a few minutes to experiment. Try isolating each hinge, feel what works best for your body, and trust your instincts. When your motion becomes smooth and repeatable, you'll find that the dink, that quiet, subtle part of pickleball, can actually become one of the most powerful weapons in your game.